So I missed the part where we were allowed to have notes. So I'm actually just going to do this from my memory. So let's see how this goes. This is my first time doing this, but I'm excited. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about a change in my life, and it was an event that continued to change the course of basically who I would turn out to be. It was a very humid night in Pensacola, Florida. And I found myself standing outside of the gay bar, waiting in line, wearing an inflatable ostrich rider costume. And I was terrified. I was terrified for a myriad of reasons. And the biggest one being that somebody might recognize me. I say this because people have this perception based on how I present myself now. Like I just came strutting down the runway of my mother's womb, wearing a bow tie and singing an Ani DeFranco song. But that's actually not what happened, and it couldn't be further from the truth. I was born to a very loving, but very religious and conservative Cuban household. From the time that I was 5, I knew that I was gay, but I wouldn't come out for almost 15 years later. I remember almost every single night from the age of 7 to the age of 20 trying to hashtag pray away the gay, and I wanted nothing more than to change how I felt on the inside. I was so religious in high school that my senior superlative was actually, get this, most Christ-like. That's not a joke. Thank you. I like to feel like I still am that way. Just a little different now. But that was a real superlative. I won it by a landslide. I know Christ was humble, but that's where I falter a little bit. But back in October of 2011, I was not out. I was still very much in the closet, and I was visiting Pensacola, Florida for a wedding. A couple of friends were getting married, and there's nothing that I love more than weddings, so I decided to RSVP and go. I decided to hit up a couple of friends that I had made my freshman year of college and told them, hey, I'm in town. It's Halloween weekend. I packed the costume and I don't want it to go to waste. Do you know of any parties that are going on? I even sweetened the pot and offered to be their designated driver. And at that time I was underage, so I didn't drink. There it is again, most Christ-like. So they responded, absolutely, and I was stoked. I went ahead, took a quick shower, threw on my costume, and headed their way. I got to their apartment, knocked on the door, and I was greeted by 4 ladies. One of them was wearing a sexy sailor costume. The other one was wearing a sexy Velma costume from Scooby-Doo, as if though she needed to get any sexier. The third was wearing a sexy, 1980s dance instructor costume. Not sure how it was sexy, but somehow it was. And then the fourth was a sexy Oktoberfest beer garden girl. There I stood in the doorway in my inflatable ostrich rider costume, clearly having missed some kind of memo, and I feel like that's so symbolic for most of my life, even today. So I went inside and we hung out for maybe about an hour as each of the girls chugged maybe 2 to 3 Mike's Hard Lemonades each. And after that time, one of them looked at me and said, hey, we should probably head out soon. I agreed and finally asked the question, hey, where is this party that we're going to today? She smiled and looked at me and said, oh, we're going to Emerald City. So in case you haven't already guessed by the dramatically flamboyant name, Emerald City is the name of a gay bar. I, at this point in my life, had been desperately trying to avoid any kind of gay bar, any kind of gay thing, and yet here I was almost bamboozled into going to the gayest sounding gay bar that I've probably ever heard of. At this point, I was in too deep to quit. I had already made a commitment, and the girls were way too tipsy off their malt liquor to drive. So I put on a nervous smile and said, all right, let's go. We drove over and got in line, and I remember just being so nervous. The girls were talking about how excited they were to dance the night away, but I was trying not to throw up because I felt like I was finally going to have to be faced with the truth that I had been trying to change for the last 15 years. So we got to the front of the line, paid our $10 cover, they put the X's on our hands, and I walked in. Initially, I was kind of unimpressed. I don't know what I was expecting, whether it was like child sacrifices on the bar, or like what, or like the wizard like literally coming to greet me. But all I saw was a dark room with the bar, and there were maybe 2 or 3 pool tables, and a couple of lesbians posted by there drinking Bud Light. I thought to myself, maybe this isn't so bad, maybe I've been building this up in my head. So we went ahead, moseyed onto the patio for a smoke. A few minutes later, one of the girls turns to me and says, "Let's go dance." I was kind of confused because I didn't really see anybody dancing in that first room, but I was like, sure. So she grabbed my hand and proceeded to lead me to some double doors. There we were greeted by a man who was covered in glitter. He was wearing nothing but a thong and angel wings. He proceeded to wink at me and said, "Enjoy, ladies." At that point, he opened the doors. The first thing I saw was what I thought was smoke billowing out of every single angle. I saw some lights flashing, and no lie, Katy Perry's "I Kissed a Girl" was playing over the loudspeaker. As the fog started to clear, or my eyes started to adjust, I noticed that the room was full of sweaty bodies, and there were 2 platforms. On those platforms were cages. In those cages, on the left-hand side, were 2 men covered in red paint, wearing devil horns making out. And I thought to myself, what the fuck did I just get myself into? I literally thought I'd time traveled back to Sodom and Gomorrah. I was like, this is it. There was a rip in the continuum, this is happening. I didn't have much time to process because there was a woman who was dressed like a sexy circus ringleader, like everybody else in the goddamn club. And she motioned at me to join her on the dance floor. And so I did. We danced for a little bit and we smiled and maybe we flirted. I don't really remember what happened, but I do remember how I felt. Because that night, for the first time, I felt like I was my authentic self. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't living some kind of a lie. I had never felt that gay in my life, at least not in public. I would say the last time I felt that gay was in 2006 when the movie Stick It came out, and in the privacy of my own home, I watched it 3 times on the same day. But this was different. This was in public. And I looked around and I noticed that everybody else in that bar probably had a similar story to mine. And I didn't know what their lives were like on the outside. They didn't know what my life was like on the outside. But I knew that on that dance floor, nothing hurt and everything was beautiful. So I remember thinking and having, a conversation with God, as most people do in the middle of the gay bar dance floor. And I remember shooting up a quick, a quick tweet up to him and being like, "Hey God, okay, so I know I'm gay, I know I've been gay for as long as I can remember, but if you are really okay with this and you want me to be out and you want me to be visible, I'm gonna need for you to send me some kind of sign, something big that you are confirming, go do you." So maybe not even 5 minutes later, I heard over the loudspeakers that the costume contest was going on. And I was like, okay, costume contest. So I walk up near the front so that I could get a good look, and of course the drag queen steps up, who is more beautiful than I could ever hope to be. I'm all sorts of confused. And she starts saying that there's 15 or 20 contestants. So the first guy goes up and he's got glasses on and he's dressed like Clark Kent. The second guy comes up and he's dressed like Tarzan. The third person comes up and she's a blonde who's trying to go for a Marilyn Monroe, but her fake mole is on the wrong side of her face. And the fourth contestant is the one that I will never forget, because she walked up on stage and she was the living, breathing, 100 times hotter real-life version of Lara Croft Tomb Raider. And I just remember that she had this late 1990s, early 2000s Kelly Clarkson hoop nose ring that I was living for. And I just remember my heart started racing and my palms started sweating and I was like, oh shit, my mouth is open. And I kind of felt a little bit oh. I felt a little uncomfortable. But in that moment I realized that God had answered my prayer. God had answered my prayer right there in the middle of a small town, sweaty gay bar. He had sent me a sign in the form of a super hot lesbian dressed as a video game character. And my life changed forever. Thank you.